And you can see these are highly plausible buildings with lots of food crops growing indoors under controlled conditions. Here's another one from the city of Toronto with all of the verticality and lots of crops being identified. Here's one from the city of San Francisco. I wouldn't go too far into these buildings. I don't think any of them have all of the things necessary in order to get this to work out. It's like looking at a picture of a rocket back in 1925 and then saying, you know, I'd really like a rocket. And it took a little while after that to get that rocket, but we got the rocket. You just have to want it. So do we want this or not? And that's the question. And I can answer that in a moment as well. These are absolutely fantastic, wonderful renderings, very well thought out, extremely evocative, highly prized for their beauty, but also for their peek into the future. And how far into the future are we peeking? This far, not 25 years down the road, with plans and everything. So I'm not going to explain this too much because a lot of this you'd have to sit down with me and we'd have to go through a lot of this in detail. But just know that some very intelligent people have given some very serious thought to the prospects of being able to farm in tall buildings inside their cities as well as inside of New York City. Even to the extent of interesting some architects in Seattle who have come up with this wonderful iteration of a prototype building, which may very well succeed on its own. It has lots of realism built into it, but here's the one I wanted to show you. There's the hope for the future. This is a third-grade vertical farm. It's got solar panels, it's got wind turbines, it's got hydroponic plants growing in it. Those kids, when they grow up, you know what? They're going to expect them. They're not going to say, oh, when I grow up, I want to build one of those. No, when they grow up, they want them to be there already. They want to work in them. They want to supply their families with that food that is so nicely coming out of these. And they want to help restore the environment. So here are their names that have helped with this project so far. There are 105 students that have participated in this project. Some of them are sitting out in this audience right now, hoping that they see their name. And many of them will. If they look in this column right over here, you might actually see you. So I offer you my thanks for allowing me to brainstorm over this 10-year period with you to develop this concept to the point of, well, you know what? We might actually be doing this. It's probably time for me to stop talking, right? And it's time for all of us to start doing, right? So that we can save water. We can farm smart. We can keep our blue planet blue. And with that, I thank you.
Thanks so much. Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Despommier. This was very impressive indeed, and I think we'll open the floor for questions. What comes to mind immediately, and as a chairman I will abuse 1 minute of your time with this, is that there is a direct correlation between science, technology, and the future you have described. And one key element in that is solar energy. And what you showed was very interesting. But what happened 4 days ago in Switzerland, an airplane entirely fed with solar energy actually took off 4 engines, 4 turboprops with the pilot inside and flew for 3 hours.
Wow.
This is a bit like the Wright brothers of 2010. So the combination of science and technology and the research to which you have contributed, I think are going to make perhaps one big leap forward in this direction, even if we don't see the results immediately. But let's open the floor for questions, please. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Richard Jordan, native of the lower Hudson River bioregion. That's how I always introduce myself, because I think bioregionally. This is the place that gives me sustenance. A question for Dr. Despommier. Some years ago, Santiago Calatrava won a competition to create a biodome on top of the roof of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Can we turn existing buildings, such as Butler Library or other places on the Columbia University campus, into these vertical farms? Thank you very much.
Thank God that was an easy one. That's an easy question to answer because we're already doing it. Not just on the Columbia University campus. We've got 5 green roofs now, and I think we're working towards making them all green. But that doesn't encompass your question of whether we can grow food on their rooftops or not. And in fact, that's actually how this idea started in my class. Some 11 years ago, that was their project, to see if they could feed Manhattan based on the rooftop area of Manhattan. And the answer was, of course not, because they were only getting a crop a year. But if you enclose it into a greenhouse and you make the greenhouse actually cycle gray water back into plant water that you can then use to grow the food, the answer is we've already got 5 companies that are in business doing that as we speak. So urban agriculture in New York City is off and running. Does it qualify as a vertical farm? It's on the top of a building, and it certainly is vertical, but my definition includes more than one story. So I would like to see an iteration like the Beijing Swimming Olympics Center, which is that beautiful ETFE-covered building. You make that into 2 or 3 stories and put lettuce inside, for instance, and start simple and prove the concept, and then move into the varieties of crops and interest all kinds of places in the world to get involved in this. And many, many, many cities are now thinking of doing this. So I can assure you that the idea is out of my hands.
Any other question? I suppose it was crystal clear. Dr. Corwell, thank you very much for your contribution. Dr. Thomas, thank you very much. And Dr. Despommier, on behalf of the World Bank, also, and to your students who are the ambassadors of those who couldn't make it today, thank you very much. And at last, the floor to recognize your contribution all. Thank you very much.